Said an error occurred. Okay, let's try this again. All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys hanging in there on the live stream. This is Sunday Gold's, a Florida State baseball podcast, now live on the audio as well with the pod. Arya Masudi, Brett Nevitt. Thanks to our sponsors, Alumni Hall and Metro Deli. Shout out to Florida State baseball. Got 2 games done, a shortened series with some weather this weekend against JMU, but got a couple of victories, Brett. That's all you can ask for. You came out of there healthy, relatively. We do have to address the Trey Beard illness and his lack of availability this weekend, but not an injury. And so you get out of there without any injuries. Saw some newcomers play, and Florida State baseball wins 2 games.
Yeah, good start. A good start to the year. Good crowds at Howser. It looked like a little weird for me watching from home, but fun listening to you instead. And was a little weird hearing you mention my name at one point. Was sitting at home, was like, whoa, that was unexpected. But overall, a good weekend. I think, obviously, like I talk about a lot, I think every year the worst offensive game of the year is the first game of the season. You got off to a hot start with Miles and Brody hitting solo shots, but then kind of, went quiet for a while there before Chef got it going again. But, bats broke out on Saturday. I thought really good pitching on Friday, not as much on Saturday. But, I think we'll get into all of it. But overall, coming out of the weekend with 2 wins and no losses is positive.
Yeah, I mean, that's the name of the game, right? Winning. All said and done, you break down everything, players, situations. In the end, all that matters is did you win, right? And I look over in Gainesville and Florida, learned a lot, I'm sure, this weekend as well against UAB, but they're going to take a hit with a loss on opening night with Liam Peterson starting. So that was a shocker, losing to UAB there in extras. A lot of teams lost this weekend. I think Louisville lost a series to Michigan State at home, and that was a top 10 Louisville team. Brett, anything else? Am I missing any big upsets on the weekend that stood out? I think those were the ones that caught my eye. There was a lot of teams pushing some of the so-called powers, right? And you have a lot of northern teams playing teams in the South. JMU is much improved. We're going to get in on that a little bit as well. I think Marlon Eichenberry went to the portal and did the right thing. He went and got some junior college guys and some D2 guys that can really make an impact at his level in the Sun Belt. And him and I had a good conversation before the game about, they've developed some really good players and had them just taken by SEC powers. And that's just how it goes. And he's trying to reinvent the wheel for JMU. And they were definitely a lot better. Had some dudes on the mound that were young and had some stuff and surprised us and had some good bats. I expect them to be way better in the Sun Belt than their projected ranking. What was it, of something like second to last? So yeah. Good weekend overall for Florida State. Brett, how do you want to attack this? What do you think? Should we go macro into micro? Do you want to go game by game, position group by position group? I'll let you kind of steer the ship on this one.
Yeah, I think first maybe just hit on the lineup on opening day, because I think that was something that everybody was really interested in and something that we were trying to figure out, and then kind of just go game by game, starting with the pitching. But, first off on the lineup, I thought the most interesting thing was Stetzer being 2 on opening day and then Chef being 2 on the second game. And, Link had talked so much about the protection for Miles, and we had talked about it as well. And I'm deciding to go with the DHs to start, and the DH not being Putnam, I think surprised a lot of people. But, it kind of spoke to, I think, the performance of Stetzer and Sheffield throughout the fall and preseason. And obviously Chef took a bit more of advantage of the opportunity than Stetzer did. And then obviously Dowd leading off too. That was another big piece of it. Overall, I think we got the position part of the lineup right. I think we went 8 for 8 on what we thought that would look like. Just the order was a little bit different. So I guess just what were your thoughts on the opening day lineup and also yesterday, Arya?
I think I'm with you. When we got to the ballpark Friday, and there had been some talk, right, that Stetzer was going to get an opportunity. I didn't know that it would be at 2. in the order. When we talked to Link in the TV production meeting, I don't think that was really something that he had hinted at. He had hinted at some other different possibilities there, but he admitted to me, and I said this on the last pod we did, he had no clue really what he was going to do on opening day with the lineup. And, I think he was probably still driving to the ballpark on Friday trying to scratch something together. And that's what I said in the broadcast. I kept harping at it, Brett, was me and Chavez were saying, we're going to learn a lot about this team alongside the fans and those watching at home. We don't know. And I think that they're still trying to learn. And you saw that, I think, throughout the weekend, different guys getting opportunities. It was clear that Link trusted some of the experience with some of the decisions that he had made. Mendez getting the start on Friday, Sheffield getting the first opportunity to pinch hit on the season, so on and so forth, right? McCulley at third base. You went with guys who had been in the program and had kind of earned their stripes, so to speak, with some opportunities. So Stutzer was a bit of a surprise there at 2. I think the rest of the lineup really didn't shock me. Chase Williams being the leadoff guy was different because they went away from that, right, in game 2 with Dowd. If I have that correctly, let me make sure that my box score is correct.
Dowd led off both games.
Okay, excuse me, sorry. I'll have something to say about Dowd leading off because I do have some thoughts on that, which is probably why it was on my mind and I said it. But I thought Brody in the 7-hole was interesting. They changed some things at the bottom throughout, but I was curious to see who would protect Miles, right? And they went with Fish behind him, Carnes in the 5-hole. So some unique things there. And then the lineup just changed one spot, right? The next day, Sheffield got the opportunity. That kid really helped himself, didn't he? It was cool. I was looking over to see where Gary was, and Gary was standing where Kevin Bailey, Miles' dad, was having the time. He was enjoying it. And you could tell he was smiling and fist pumping, and Noah brings something to the table, man. I know I might be jumping the gun here on our agenda of getting down the lineup, but man, Noah, it's pure. The bat waggle, you knew it was like dad, and then hitting ability. I can't wait till the power taps in, right, for him, and he starts creating that whip that gets the ball out of the park because the kid hits, and it's pure, and he's unfazed, and moments don't bother him. And I know I'm already anointing him after 2 games in the season against JMU, but that was really cool. And then Miles, you guys heard my call on the broadcast. It was, I lost it. First pitch. And how cool was that for you, Brett, to hear he can hit it for miles and miles? And it was almost like perfect television. And first pitch, and he admires it a bit, and it was so cool. Howser was sold out. That moment really stood out for me too.
Yeah, I think it was about 30 seconds after I texted you, this kid's fastball looks incredibly hittable, that he threw an 89-mile-per-hour fastball middle to Miles, and not a great decision there, unless he was hoping to see the ball go 500 feet as it did. So quite the way to start the year off for Miles. I think, that just shows the power that we know that he has. And, it also just shows how locked in he is. I thought that was my biggest takeaway with Miles when I saw him the weekend prior in the scrimmages, was just that like every swing was a barrel. And I felt like he was just ready to go and ready to face some new pitchers. And I think you're going to expect a lot more of those as the year goes on. And also good to see him work some walks this weekend. So a good opening weekend for Miles, and a good way to start the year off for your offense.
Yeah, nice little pick there too at the end of game 1, right? McCulley, terrific play at third base. I thought he was solid at third defensively, but Miles with the pick there overall. What a weekend for him. And as I think scouting reports start to hone in on how you limit Miles from beating you weekend to weekend, you're going to need some guys to step up. And that's why, to me, the next guy that impressed me, and we'll get to Sheffield because to me that was the star of the weekend, but to see Fish have a big game 2 was really impressive. I know game 1 didn't go the way that he wanted, but he played a pretty good shortstop overall. He was clean. You saw why the coaches felt comfortable with him there. And then offensively, I thought game 2, he showed you some ability to protect Miles as well.
Yeah, I thought Fish put together good ABs all weekend, kind of just fighting off a lot of two-strike pitches. And, one of the balls that he had hit through the right side of the infield yesterday just was a really, really good swing on a good 2-strike breaking balls. So overall, just felt like he was really comfortable in the box this weekend and showing off the experience that he has from being here for a third year. And then I thought up the middle there was no glaring issues this weekend with Khaled short. I thought there was one ball, the chopper up the middle, where Chase made the throw to third, which somehow got overturned. There was a bit of a miscommunication there between Gabe and Cal on who was going to go get it. Probably a little bit more of Gabe's ball, but nobody ends up getting that one. But other than that, I didn't think there were any glaring issues there this weekend defensively for Cal. So, a good first weekend for him as well. And I thought, just to see him comfortable in making the throws, and he didn't look antsy at all, I thought, which you wouldn't expect out of him. But just seeing him get back to the middle infield and not being antsy with that, and the game clock was what we expected, so that was good to see to start the year off.
Yeah, and I agree with one of the YouTube comments from Grant Wilk 52. The communication does need work up the middle. There was, like Brett said, a couple times where a ball gets through and guys are trying to figure out who goes where, and I think that'll get cleaned up. Link Jarrett's one of the best infield coaches in college baseball, his specialty. But I didn't see any glaring weaknesses in the infield.
There was
this weekend.
There was just the one other play where I think Frazier didn't cover the bag on the first and third throw down from Carnes, where he kind of lobbed it and nobody was at second. I think that was the other communication issue. But yeah, I thought other than that, they were fine up the middle this weekend.
And then what was it? The Frazier didn't cover first base properly.
Yeah,
he probably should have been there. I think the replay showed he stepped on the green bag instead of the white bag. And so, yeah, that's tough. That was a tough play to watch. I think, Brett, we're talking about the offense right now, I know, but something that Chavez and I were talking about on the way, I think, to the park, we were on the phone, one of the games. You're not going to replace Lodis and Furrow up the middle. It's just not going to happen. I think this weekend you saw what normal college baseball infields look like. And I actually think Florida State has the potential to be better than average at up the middle and in the infield this year. It's just last year you were plus up the middle. I mean, it's some of the balls Lodis gets to, nobody can get to. It's very few. And Furrow's a very athletic shortstop playing second base. And so that chemistry too, after 2 years, is not going to be easily replaced. So to me, it was less disappointment for the guys that were there. And I know some people will make a lot of it and go, oh, that guy can't do this and that. And yeah, I think some guys got to get a little bit better. It's opening weekend. They will get better with more reps. But you also have to mention, you're not replacing Lodis and Furrow. I mean, Alex Lodis got called up to the Braves big league camp in spring training. So that to me was something that stood out as well defensively.
Yeah, and I think you see at the end of the games too how much trust they have in Jace Estes to put him in at second. I think both games they ended up pinch hitting for Frazier and ended up putting Jason as a defensive sub. I think that has a lot to do with trusting that he's going to do a lot of that stuff that they expect. But yeah, like you said, there's no way to replace Alex and Drew, and we've talked about that. And just Alex's range and the consistency of both of them and what they were doing. And last year, that was also both of their second year in the program, so they know exactly where they need to be. There's a lot going on at all times on Link's infield, especially when you play a team like James Madison that does a lot of small ball stuff. So it did look like they got sped up a little bit at times this weekend, which we're not used to seeing. But you do have 3 new guys really in 3 new positions. Obviously, McCauley was there last year, and Fish was too, but McCauley was backing up Lodis at short, and Cal was playing third. So everybody's kind of in a new spot except for Miles. So I think it'll just take a little bit of time to smooth out some of that stuff in real game action when it's a little bit sped up.
Yeah, spot on. All right, 5-1 in game one. Mendez, I thought, wasn't perfect, but pretty darn good, right, for a Friday start. His stuff didn't seem quite as maybe electric as I've seen it in the past. I expect that to, as it warms up and he gets going a little bit, you'll probably see some more 4s and 6s with the fastball. But he debuted a cutter. I thought the slider that he debuted as well, the new slider, got a lot of swings and misses. Curveball looked good. And overall, I can't complain with a guy who goes 5 innings. He seemed much more efficient. He got quicker outs, gave up just 4 hits. Was it 2 free passes with the walk and a hit by pitch and 7 strikeouts? Pretty solid there from West against, like we talked about, a much improved JMU lineup.
Yeah, the stuff was pretty consistent from the prior week that, I think mostly the fastball 91, 94, averaged like 92, was down to 89 at one point, but was also up to 94. Mixed in all five pitches. I think curveball and changeup both were like the most used secondaries, but you used the cutter and slider as well. And like you said, I thought the slider was really, really good. I think he only threw about 6 sliders and had 2 strikeouts or 3 strikeouts with that of his 7 Ks. The changeup looked much, much improved, as we've talked about and he's talked about. The arm speed on that pitch, the deception of it looks, kind of like what we expect to see from Beard when Beard gets out there. And Beard's was a little bit slower, but West is starting to create that same type of deception off his fastball with his changeup. And I think he had 6 whiffs on the changeup on 7 swings. So, I mean, most of the times when the guys are swinging on it right now, they're whiffing through it. So he was at his best when he had runners on. I think, every inning, the second through fifth, had a guy in runner in scoring position, and all 7 of his Ks came with runner in scoring position. So, it was good to see West be able to contain that stuff. I think you would like to see him be a little bit more cleaner, and a little bit, give up less barrels against JMU. And I think some of the barrels came against a new cutter. But overall, I thought it was a good first outing for West. Good to see him handle the Friday night environment the way he did. I thought overall he didn't look like he was getting out of himself. You saw him doing the breathing work stuff he talked about on here. That looks like it's working out for him so far, and mostly consistent with the command. There was a little stretch where he lost the fastballs up into the arm side like we used to see, but for the most part, I thought the fastball command was decent. So good first step for West this year. Just need to see this continue through the non-con play.
Yeah, I can't complain with West there. That was really good stuff as a starter. Bryson Moore, game 2. I know that it wasn't the outing that he was probably looking for on that one. Weird situation, though, man. You get told on short notice that you're going to jump up a day. Trey Beard not feeling well, scratched for an illness. And that pushes up your debut, which has its own set of nerves and anxieties and anticipation one day earlier. I thought Moore in the first inning looked pretty good. The curveball is electric. We had some access to TrackMan and some of the spin rate numbers that he was generating, and you were both Chavez and I were really impressed. Fastball was 92, 94 at its best, a lot of 91 to 93s. And I know the second inning just kind of got away from him, and he lost his command a bit there, which was surprising. He hadn't done that in the preseason. And again, I go back to, was that nerves, new program, moving up a day, off your routine. I want to see more from Bryson Moore, no pun intended, before truly having an evaluation on him. But I know that wasn't the day that he was looking for in an all-around weird Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, just a weird day finding out that Beard wasn't going to be able to go pretty late. I think it was about an hour before first pitch that it ended up coming out that he wasn't going to be able to go just due to illness, not an arm injury or anything like that. So no worries there about Beard long term. Just wasn't available this weekend. With Moore, it is weird getting thrown in there a day early. In your head, you just kind of think one thing all week probably. He was pitching. He pitched last Saturday as well, so it wasn't like he was on short rest. But just in your head, you can think one thing, and then all of a sudden, you're doing it on a whole different day. But I have had some concerns about Moore's durability and just how the stuff kind of dips a little bit after the first couple innings and after the first 30 or so pitches, because that's kind of how I felt watching last week in his outing where he went 60 pitches. I felt like the first 2 innings were really, really good and really dominant, and the stuff was top of the line. And then after that, it kind of fell off a little bit. And that second inning, he was out there against James Madison. It was a really, really long inning. I think he ended up throwing at least 25 pitches. I think maybe it was 27 exactly he ended up throwing in that inning. But like in the first inning, I texted you after the inning, like, that's legit stuff. Like when he's throwing 93, 95 with the fastball, and it's a good fastball, and you add in the sweeper that was getting some legit sweep on it at like 82, 84, and then he was throwing the curveball a little bit harder at 79, 80. And when that thing's 79, 80, it's a really, really good pitch. But then, that stuff kind of fell off to like the curveball was 77 in the next inning. The sweeper was 81, 82. Fastball's down to 91, 92. So I think that kind of leads to longer counts, which then leads to the walks. So I'm just interested to see what he looks like on a more normal week, especially once he gets past 30 pitches, because that's been a bit of a concern I've had after watching it last week and then also coming out of this week. But that first inning shows you the stuff that he has and the capability and the ceiling. It's just how long can he hold that stuff and keep it in the zone.
I have a gut feeling, Brett, that as the season goes along and Bryson Moore, I think they'll start him a couple more times, obviously. I'm not sure he'll be a guy that'll go more than 75 pitches most outings. I think there's a potential there to have Moore go, 2 times through the order. And you hope that's, 4, 5, 6 innings. But I think it's 70 pitches or so, just because of the injury history too, right? You want to make sure that he's built up and ready to go. You might have to pair somebody off of him or 2 guys there on a Sunday. I don't think this is a case where it's like every one of your starters can go 7 innings all the time. You'd like that to be the case. But I'm curious to see if that trends, but it's something that I just have a gut feeling on. But obviously he's going to get another opportunity. He's slated right now to go against Auburn next Sunday. That would be, Saturday to Saturday would be Nebraska. Is that game 2 in Arlington? Is it Michigan, Nebraska?
Saturday they play Auburn.
It's Saturday, Auburn.
Yeah.
So he's okay. So what is it? Is it Michigan first, Auburn second, Nebraska third? Okay,
Yeah.
that all mixed up in my head. So he is slated right now to go what? Against Auburn if he stays a week. If Beard's ready to go, then he would probably move back to Sunday against Nebraska. It's a pretty good Nebraska team, by the way, and it'll be a step up from JMU. So thank you for helping me work through that, Brett. On the pod. That's what you're here for, to provide analysis, but also make sure that I stay on track. I wasn't discouraged though by Bryson Moore. I think that's kind of, I left not being all that discouraged at the park on Saturday because I saw the stuff. I think there's just more that needs to be evaluated there before we really have a solid opinion on what's going on there. All right, they didn't play a game 3. We'll get into that at the end. Game 1 at the plate. I know Miles. We talked about it a little bit, but what was your sheer reaction seeing Miles take a first pitch of his season? I said it on the call, he wastes no time. I mean, it was just like he steps in the box, walk up music, chants, adios.
My reaction was, well, that's gone, and that's probably the first of many this year. And it just looks so easy sometimes for him. But mostly I think it was just nice to see him do that. Quickly just takes pressure off of him for this year. There's just such high expectations locally for him, in the program and also just in the, for him himself and with the draft expectations of this year. It's just, there's a lot on him this year. And when you can start it like that in your first swing, I think it can just quickly just relieve pressure. You don't have to press for the rest of the weekend. Now it's just go play and swing like you normally do. And that's going to lead to a lot more homers for Miles this year.
Yeah, just special, man. It's a special bat. And 2 for 3 on that opening day. Let's see what else stands out. Looking through the box score there of the 5-1 victory. Brody DeLamielleure. I mean, you've been high on Brody since he stepped foot on campus. He showed you in stretches last year. He can hit the fastball, man. If you miss a fastball over the heart of the plate to Brody, he knows what to do with it, and it's usually pretty hard contact. To see him homer twice this weekend, were they both off fastballs? I know the first one was both were to right center. That's a guy that I do believe is a candidate to make that jump year to year that we had been talking about all offseason and preseason that you needed to see from somebody. And to me, he fits the mold. If you get that from Brody, I don't know if he had heard people were trying to come for his job in right field or what, but yeah, Brody's locked in right now. It was a really good weekend for him overall.
Yeah, I think the best thing about those 2 homers was seeing him do it right v right against fastballs and driving them opposite to the opposite field, because that just means he's staying on the fastball, and that's going to allow him to, get the sliders from the right-handed pitchers that he struggled with so much last year, and that was leading to a lot of the strikeouts for Brody. I think if he's driving the fastball to the opposite field from the right-handed pitchers, it's going to allow him to stay on the breaking balls and not whiff on those as much as he did last year. And I do think we sleep on Brody's power, and we as in kind of everybody. At this point, that's 8 homers for Brody and about 125 or so plate appearances in his career. I mean, you're homering in about every 15 or 16 at plate appearances at this point. And when you do have that right-handed pop going that way at Howser, we've seen guys just be able to kind of just pepper balls off or over the fence over and over again. And we saw Cam do that his sophomore year, and that just makes it so much easier for right-handed hitters to produce at Howser, because it does get really big to the left center gap sometimes and into the pull side for right-handed hitters. So yeah, I thought for Brody, good start, especially with, like you said, the pressure on him that Stetzer is putting there, with his ability and his athleticism, and obviously the bat that Link likes so much, enough to put it number 2 to start the year. So yeah, I just think that we need to kind of think of Brody as more of a power bat than we do, just because of what he's been able to produce at this point in a limited sample set.
Did they hit him 7th in both games, Brett? I got to go back and look through my notes.
Yes. The everything in the lineups were the same, except switching Sheffield for Stetzer, but everything else was the same the first 2 days.
Yeah. I'd like to see Brody moved up in the lineup. I think there's a real candidate there to hit second, for me. And he had been hitting second in some of the inter squad scrimmages that you and I went to. That's a kid who can do it. Was he hitting second for most of fall?
Yeah, while Chase was out, and I think Carnes was hitting a little bit more down in the order in the fall. I think most of the at least the one weekend I was there, Brody, all of his at bats were in the 2-hole. I think for me, the interesting part about the lineup is where Chase is at 6. It felt like he came up this weekend with 2 outs a lot, and I don't feel like that's exactly where you want Chase hitting, because he's not exactly like the guy that you want driving in runs. I think he's more so like the guy that you want starting the rally. So I wonder if maybe you switch, maybe you pull Chase down a little bit, and that moves Brody up to 6. But yeah, I think that's something that the 9 will be played with all year. I'll be interested to see what it looks like at Jacksonville on Tuesday.
I think both Brody and even Noah, who I do think we're going to talk about and has earned opportunities. Brett, I think they're both good fastball hitters, man. And that 2-hole, you're going to see some fastballs, which makes a lot of sense. And that's, if you can, have a Miles right in front of you, and whether it's Chase or Braden at leadoff, I really do think that 2-hole hitter is going to get some pitches to hit, and both of those guys fit the mold of guys who can crush fastballs. And Brody showed you some power there to get it over the fence a couple times. I'm curious to see what they do against Jacksonville, and then next weekend. That's a big ballpark in Arlington. It's got some big power alleys, and you wouldn't know it because I've been watching some of the games this weekend there from the opening weekend at Globe Life, and people are leaving the yard left and right, and one kid hit 3 home runs in a game. It's the metal bat. Obviously, that's going to help a little bit too. But 22,000 people went to watch Arkansas play TCU at Globe Life. Pretty wild, man. When you think that TD Ameritrade at the College World Series, I think its max capacity is about 24,000 or so. So you had basically, that's, it's cool to see college baseball growing. You and I have loved it for a very long time. People are starting to catch up. It's being covered more by the media nationally, and this is really cool. So, those are my thoughts on Brody. Can we talk about Dowd a little bit? You and I were both very, very high on the acquisition. It was late in the game. It happened because the Noles had some extra spots they needed to fill because of some draftees that signed, but that guy could play. I said I wanted him to be my leadoff. I still think I want him to be my leadoff, and it's for the many reasons I said and thought would be the reasons he'd be successful. He takes pitches, he works counts, he walks when he needs to, he ambushes fastballs when he needs to. It's a very mature at bat. He's a very good college hitter, and he has just enough pop, I think, especially with the screen and right, as you saw a 3-run homer. I know that the argument's going to be He hit a 3-run homer because he was lower in the lineup and he had guys in front of him, and that's an RBI situation. But the maturity of the at-bat at the beginning of a game to me is so important. It reminds me of Taylor Walls, the way, T. Walls could do it. It was, you need me to work a walk? I'll do it. You need me to ambush a fastball after an adjustment that I made second time through? I can do it. Can I hit fastballs and off-speed pitches? Sure. Can I pull one out for a homer? Can I hit one to the gap in left center? Yeah, he did everything, all of the above. And to me, it's such a mature hitter. That's a star, man. I think he's got real all ACC potential in this lineup for Florida State. And you got yourself one there in Braden Dowd. You hit on that one.
Yeah, I thought it was really good to see him put the swing on the homer that he did, mostly because like when you go and watch him and play in short stints, like you can see the bat to ball, you can see the on base skills that you see in the numbers, but you struggle to see the 10 homers that he hit last year. Sometimes when you go and watch him take BP, or you go and watch just kind of the day-to-day ABs and scrimmages, and when I saw him in the Cape as well. But I'd been told that he kind of just picks and chooses his spots to turn and burn, and that's exactly what you got in the second inning of that second game. Turned and burned on an up and in fastball. And when you pick and choose your spots as a left-handed hitter and you can hit the fastball and barrel it up at Howser with the right field fence, like that's going to lead to some real production. And if he keeps doing that you're probably going to see double-digit homers again this year. So it was just really good to see that swing out of him, because it just wasn't something I had seen yet in the past, but that kind of just confirmed, like, hey, he can go out there and hit 10 plus homers to go along with the guy that you expect to hit for average and the guy that you expect to be on base at an above average clip, 400 plus clip. You think he's going to be on base easily, I think, this year. So yeah, it was really good to see him show the kind of that impact that maybe we hadn't seen yet, just in scrimmages and stuff. But overall, we know that he's always going to be on base and always be on the barrel. So that was a really, really good day for him after going, I think, 0 for 4 in the first game. So good to get off, the schneid there a little bit.
Definitely. Noah Sheffield, big hit coming into pinch hit. Kid can hit, man. Gosh. Then day 2, he had everything. They didn't retire him this weekend. I think he had 5 plate appearances and he reached in all 5. That puts an interesting wrinkle into the competition, doesn't it? He was one of those guys. I think I saw a question in a comment here on YouTube about how many guys do you think you're comfortable with hitting a baseball? And I think the answer is about 13 or 14 of them. Sheffield's one of them. And one of the reasons this is going to be interesting to keep an eye on, isn't it? Is it Sheffield? Is it Putnam? He only got one at bat. Paulino came in and had a base hit in the one opportunity that he got in game 2. How do you think Florida State goes about this? Because I think Sheffield has got the inside track after an impressive opening weekend.
Yeah, I think when it comes to how many do I feel comfortable with in the lineup, it's probably like 12. When it comes to how many do I feel comfortable with in the field, it's probably like 9. And I think that's kind of where your problem lies in trying to figure it out. Like, yes, you do have a lot of really good bats, but you don't have as many athletes that can play the field as you want to have, at least as many as you speak of on your roster. And that's kind of why you have this issue. But it's always good to have a depth of bats. And, the other thing is these guys are all right-handed hitters too, not many left-handed hitters in that mix. But I was really interested to see Sheffield get the pinch hit opportunity for Frazier in that first game. I thought when they turned the camera to the dugout that it'd probably be Putnam, but, Link goes to Chef in that spot and said it was just kind of a gut feel thing. And, Chef came through for that. And then he gets the opportunity the next day and comes through in that opportunity, barreled up a couple of baseballs. And, I thought you made a good point about whoever's hitting in front of Miles is going to get a lot of fastballs. Someone called me and told me that about Chef hitting too. Like, he's going to see some fastballs and he can hit the fastball. I think there's other guys in the lineup that could do that as well. I think Carnes is someone that could hit the fastball too, and same with Brody, like you mentioned. But that is a really interesting profile there, hitting in front of Miles. So, a really hot start for him. You need to see it continue as the pitching ramps up. But I think Chef's been swinging the bat well for a while now. Every time I've gotten to see him between the fall and the preseason, he's barreled some baseballs up, and he's always been an advanced hitter. It's just been about having the opportunities in the lineup and trying to find a spot in the field.
I think he's earned the right, though, for another start. I think right now, and this is a staff that does reward performance, and you've seen that the last couple of years. So definitely do think we'll see more of Noah Sheffield here as we get going. All right, I'm trying to look through the box scores here, Brett, to see what else stood out offensively. Is there anyone that you want to mention? What did you think of Carnes coming back? I know he had battled some injuries. Seemed to have some really good swings at the plate in both games. I think he just missed a home run on one. I'll admit I got on the first one that was to the wall. The trajectory and the loud sound that it made off the bat, I thought he had gotten a home run, so I had to slow my roll there as the ball approached the wall. But I thought offensively he looked pretty much like what I had seen last year, right? Like pretty advanced at the plate. Defensively, probably wanted to see a bit more there. Receiving, they had talked about how much improvement he had made in that area, and I thought JMU had a little bit too much free reign on the base paths on the weekend, and some of that's miscommunication. But Carnes behind the plate, to me, not quite what I was hoping for, but Carnes at the plate, he can really mash.
Yeah, at the plate, I feel really good about Carnes having a pretty big year and hitting for a good amount of power based off what he's been doing the last 2 weekends and what I've seen. I think if it's, a warmer weekend, if this was June or if this was May, Carnes might have had 2 homers this weekend, and I think you might not have got because he did put, a drive into 2 separate balls. There was one to center as well, I think to the center field warning track, one to the left field warning track, and just barrels overall for him. And he walked twice as well this weekend. Behind the plate, yeah, it was interesting. I did not expect him to kind of have the drops that he had because, I hadn't seen that. But, I kind of wondered if maybe some of that has to do with getting back to playing under the lights and playing at night. I don't know how much they've done that to ramp up to the season in scrimmages. I think they might have done it in the midweek, just because it's different when it's under the lights versus during the day. But that's not a good enough excuse. I thought the weekend prior he was a lot better. Maybe some of it is getting back to games. Maybe some of it is just getting back to catching 9 innings because nobody's done that in a while, and just has to get back to conditioning for it. And he had missed some time too, but I think he's going to be better defensively than what he showed this weekend. I just kind of believe the tools are there to be better than that. And he'd shown much better receiving when I saw him the prior weekend. And, I think some of it's just first weekend, some of it's just getting comfortable with all the arms that are new. But I think he's going to be their everyday catcher, and he needs to be, and you expect him to have a lot of impact with the bat. And he just needs to catch a little bit cleaner on the barrel, because he was really close this weekend to having 2 homers like Brody.
Yeah, really good at bats from him for the entire weekend in the 2 games. It's unique to try and do one of these recaps after you only play 2 games because it feels a little incomplete, right? And the sample set's not all quite there, and we need a larger sample size of at bats and opportunities and games to really have a feel for this group. And I think Link does too, and that staff does too. And I'm really high on what Carnes will do. And I think I trust Brad Vanderglass a lot in terms of his ability to coach catchers. So that'll continue to keep improving. Anything else, man, at the plate that you want to touch on before we talk some of the other maybe bullpen arms that pitched this weekend? Any storylines that you want to follow? Maybe game 2 was good to see the bats break out, right? You've said it before, and I agree with you. Opening day is weird because everyone's pressing at the plate. Mm-hmm. It's got jitters, and it's the best opportunity most of these teams have who come in to upset, right, the so-called favorites. And you saw UAB beat Florida on game 1. And then things settle in, and the pressure's off a little bit in game 2. And the Noles really could have scored, 20 runs if you played a full 9 innings. I think a mercy run rule after 7, and you had 16 runs on 17 hits, and it felt like the gates were going to open up there in the final few innings. So good to see the offense as a whole in game 2 step up.
Yeah, I think we hit on everybody pretty much individually. The only other one I was going to add was Kelvin Paulino had a hit in his only at bat of the weekend in a pinch hit opportunity. That's another guy we expect to get some opportunities, and I think that's some of why you're a little bit disappointed that you couldn't get Game 3 in with all the guys that you want to get at bats. But hopefully you get some more guys, some more opportunities this upcoming week.
You want to answer this question from Josh Depends on, do you still think Chase will bat leadoff?
Uh, I think it would take Dowd struggling for a while in that spot at this point, just based on where they started. I'm a little bit more interested to see if Dowd ends up, sharing some opportunities in center. But just with the way that Lynx started it out with them and the way it's gone this first weekend, at least, I don't want to overreact to these first two games. But I do think at least for this first part of the season, they're going to let this ride out and see what they've got with that. At least that's what it seems like, in my opinion.
Brett, I'd like to admit something to you right now. I have the wrong lineups for both games on my browser. The Seminoles.com website reshuffles the batting order and the box score until you click the PDF where it actually gives you the lineup and the clear box score. So that answers a lot of my questions. I legitimately thought I was having mental issues. Like I legitimately thought I was like, I need to go check myself in somewhere because I'm like, I swear I called both games and I filled a lineup card out. Why am I blanking on if Chase led off or not? And it's because my eyes are reading the wrong. Come on, Seminoles.com. Let's get it together. Now I have the correct lineup up on these PDFs. That is wild. That is wild. So I apologize on that. So I can't take credit for saying Braden Dowd should lead off. Yeah, he should lead off. That's what they did. Good job. Congratulations on figuring it out 41 minutes into this live podcast. Man. It's like putting on it's like looking through binoculars the wrong way the entire time. You're like, why can't I see this? Well, it's because you're looking through the wrong way, man. All right. Come on, Brett. All right. We're settled here. Bullpen. Thoughts on the pen overall? I thought some good performances, some that left a little bit to be desired, but overall pluses for me. Purcell, A+. O'Leary, I thought plus, but it was an A until the final few outs for him. I think he had gone past 40 pitches and it started to run out of gas there and the fuel tank was emptying. And then shout out to Cole Stokes who came in and I thought, man, that lived up to the hype, right? 98 sounds different when it hits the mitt. It just does. And I think there's more in the tank for him to be able to reach triple digits by the end of the season. And then Cooper Whitted, salute. I got to give him his props. He's one that you need to step up, right? You don't have a lot of depth, left-handed pitching. You need him to step up. And I thought he did that in his outing as well.
Yeah, I'll just go based on how they kind of came into the game. John Abraham was the first out of the pen. I thought we saw some of the same inconsistencies that we've seen out of John in the past. Allowed 2 hits, allowed a walk. Like I mentioned, one of those hits was a ball that bounced up the middle on a miscommunication. If the throw from Chase doesn't get overturned, John likely doesn't allow the 1 run he allowed in 1.2. Purcell, I thought that was really, really good to see. That's not really what we've seen, in the fall and the preseason. That was like at least a tick up, if not 2 ticks up, if not more. Like it just, the stuff was better. The way he competed was like elite. I thought, that's what it's supposed to look like coming out of the bullpen. That's what it's supposed to look like intensity wise. Did walk a couple of batters, but I just thought the stuff was a lot better than what I expected. Throwing up to 93, kind of was sitting 93 for a little bit there. Had been mostly just 90, 91 in the past. The breaking ball was tighter and harder. The changeup plays really well against left-handed hitters. I think he's someone that you can expect to get right-handed and left-handed hitters out with the breaking ball and the changeup. So he is able to extend like he did in this outing. So I think you saw that experience from him kind of shine through in the first outing, which was good to see. And it's something that they wanted to go out and get for the bullpen in the portal. And that kind of paid off for you right away there. O'Leary, I kind of have a take that O'Leary might be the best pitcher on the staff, at least in the long run. I just really, really like the stuff. I know the outing kind of got away from him there in the third inning he came back out for. I was kind of surprised that he went back out there for the third inning. He wasn't one of the arms that they were building up to be extended. He was kind of built up as a sprint arm, a 1 to 2 inning guy, and he had worked 2.1 kind of perfect innings. But they decided to run him back out for the fifth, and then he allowed 3 straight guys to reach base, which resulted in the 2 earned runs on his line. But O'Leary is a guy that I think that you feel like really, really good about in high leverage situations, which he got you out of one. And it was in the second inning, but I think you go to him there because you feel like that's where the game can get away from you a little bit if James Madison breaks out there. But if you keep it there at 5-3, or what was it, 3-2? If you keep it there at 3-2 and you strand the 2 guys on base, you feel really good about what you're going to do the rest of the game, and that happened pretty quick with Dowd's 3-run homer. So I really like where O'Leary's stuff is at. It's a really, really good breaking ball. It's a good cutter. I think the best cutter on staff, and the fastball plays as well. Wooded, I think you're going to have backwards splits there, it looks like. The changeup is really good, and it's a pitch that I think you're going to see a lot out of the bullpen after seeing what it could do against the right-handed hitters of James Madison. Struck out 3 straight with the changeup in the 6th inning, I think it was. And then Stokes, I talked about the slider after I saw it last weekend. It's an elite pitch. However they use him, that pitch is going to be the weapon, and he's going to throw it a lot. He's going to throw it to get ahead in counts. He's going to throw it to get back in counts, and he's going to throw it for strikeouts too. And then he's going to mix in 97, 98 off of that. So, I think you saw there with them trying to protect the 10-run rule, kind of a closer situation despite being up 11, because you don't want to give up 2 there and extend the game. And he handled it well. And I think that's something that he could do. If you wanted him to be a shutdown closer, you could do that. But I think they kind of want to expand his rollout more than that, and not just have him be someone that's kind of locked down to just throwing the 9th on certain days. Like, I think they want his role to be pretty big and just do a lot of different things for them and utilize them as much as they can.
I think really one of the only disappointments for me from the pitching staff this weekend was wanted more from Abraham. It's year 3 for John, and he's pitched in some big games, man. And, to come out there and, I thought the stuff looked as good as it ever has, right? Fastball was 93. Curveball looked really good. Just the command, man. It's 3rd year, and you need him. You need John Abraham. Like, this staff is going to need John to get some big outs for them this season. And they're going to go back to that well and continue to see. He was even built up, right, to be able to potentially start. And, just wanted more there. I don't know about you, Brett, but I was hoping for more, especially from one of your most experienced guys on the roster who's already pitched in some big moments. He'll get the ball again, I'm sure, very soon. And you want to see that, it's been Jekyll and Hyde type of career for Abraham. When it's really good, he's lights out and it's electric. And when he struggles to find the zone, he can struggle against against teams like JMU, which he should be going out there and overwhelming.
Yeah, I was a little surprised he was the first arm out of the pen with a 2-run lead in the 6th. I thought it would probably be someone like Stokes, but ended up being John, and did give up a run like I talked about. But yeah, it's always kind of been the command, and he's working with the sinker and the cutter now. So I think we'll see how that develops for him, and it helps him with the consistency. But he is someone that you need on this staff to give you some innings, and that's especially when the starter comes down the fifth. You're not going to get to the 6th, 7th all the time. You need somebody to kind of bridge the gap in the 6th and the 7th to get you to the 8th and the 9th to go to guys like Purcell and Stokes to kind of shut the game down. But yeah, it's like we've always talked about John. We know what this stuff is. We know it can be really good. It's just it needs to show up.
Agreed. And they're going to go back to him. Like we said, they are going to trust him to go out there and get outs. And you hope to see, the best version of Abraham each and every time. You kind of hope that it trends that way by the end of his junior season, but we'll see. Manka midweek. Yeah, I think that's where they're trending. I'll be interested to see what happens with Trey Beard. If he's ready to go, I have no inside information on this. Are they going to just wait until next weekend to give him his first appearances? Could he throw a bullpen at JU? Do you not even take him to JU and don't worry about that and let his, first appearance be like we talked about next weekend? That's probably it. But I think it's Manka first. And then there's a couple of guys who haven't pitched that need to get some work. And JU's got a pretty good baseball team this year. They got a good lineup, and they always do play Florida State pretty tough, Brett. Like, it's not an easy game over there at Sessions, as they call it, Johnny Sessions Stadium. And looking forward to that trip again, because it's always got a lot of Noles fans. It's like 99% Noles are there, and the 1% of JU fans who show up to, 5 baseball games a year. And it's one of them's against Florida State, one's against Florida, and then they figure out the other 3. But always a pretty good time. And that'll be a big one there. I don't want to harp too much on the weather from today. Weird situation all around, curfews involved. Just tough, right? You didn't get a third game in, but maybe for the best, especially with Beard not being available to throw. That puts your pitching staff in a bit of a bind. I don't know. They just didn't play a third game, and it was raining cats and dogs here in Tallahassee. Ironically, at like 2:00, perfect sunshine, and you could go outside and enjoy 75-degree weather in Tallahassee today in the afternoon. But tried to move the game up to 11, didn't get it in, and JMU had to get on a plane and go home, so they scrapped the game. But yeah, Brett, all I got on that, to be honest, and all I feel comfortable actually even really saying. So on to JMU.
Yeah, it's not the best to not get 3 in the first weekend. I think, like I said, with as many guys as you want to get opportunities, you need those opportunities. I thought throwing Stokes in the last inning in the second game was pretty telling that there wasn't going to be a third game, even though they tried to play on Sunday. I just thought Stokes would be the guy that would start the third game if they were going to play it. So, I think it's a little disappointing for a lot of people that pretty much everybody knew what the weather forecast was on Sunday for a while. We talked about it on the podcast coming into the weekend, and there was no doubleheader set up like there was at other places. Link has kind of made it known his thoughts on doubleheaders when you don't have to play them like the ACC forces you to in some spots based on rules, and you have to play a certain amount of games. But, when it's your non-con, it's up to the home team, and, they don't prefer to play doubleheaders, and it's up to them. So they didn't play a doubleheader, and you come out of the first weekend with only 2 games, and you are fresh on the mound for Tuesday, but lost an opportunity for a win. But I guess at the same time, you lost an opportunity for a loss. And I think they just feel like 18-inning days can kind of get away from you sometimes. But if there is a glaring weakness with this program, it's its ability to handle weather delays, in my opinion, and it's been that way for a while. And I just think there's a better way to go about it, rather than bringing people to the park and then deciding 16 minutes after first pitch was supposed to be that you just can't play all day. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
All right. Anyway, moving to JU. What do you want to see on Tuesday against the Dolphins?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see Manka. I'm probably as high on Manka as anybody. I've always been that way. When he was a high school recruit, even when he had TJ, I just had, some people that really liked him that I talked to, and then getting to see him, last year, despite the numbers coming off of TJ, but mostly just from the way he threw this summer. And I got to see him a lot. I think I saw 4 starts of his on the Cape when he was throwing the ball really, really well. And he just looked incredibly comfortable with starting, and he looked like he was attacking hitters just consistently. This stuff was good. The fastball is just really hard for hitters to get on top of and to barrel. Like, I just feel like so often we see Manka's fastball get popped up. And something that Chris Nee texted me this weekend that I thought was pretty funny was, he kind of forgot how big Manka is. And I think everybody kind of does. You just don't realize that he's like 6'6" and 250 plus pounds. Like, he's a hoss on the mound. His name's Big Ticket for a reason. And I'm excited to watch how he handles that. And I'm guessing he's probably about to 75 pitches, maybe only 60. But I think he's in similar spot to where Beard and Mendez were. And some of the other guys that have not thrown yet, Ben Barrett, Gabe Nard, who I think might have gotten the ball today if they were able to go. Chris Kinnear, Jake Eccles hasn't thrown yet. Rhett Vaughn, redshirt freshman, and Kevin Meeble is the one left-hander who hasn't got to throw yet, along with Beard. So those are some of the guys that I think you might see, along with a couple of the bullpen arms we've already gotten to see in high leverage situations. But like you said, someone also reached out to me and said that Jacksonville is a pretty impressive lineup. I think they have a really good freshman hitting at the top of the order. So intrigued to see what they look like this year. I always think they're a pretty scrappy and good bunch.
Yeah, and they always play Florida State and Florida tough because it means a lot, right, to those guys. And a lot of times it's, state of Florida players, which means they got some skill and they didn't get recruited or be able to sign to play at Florida State or Florida or Miami or the, some of the bigger schools. So that game has a little scrappiness always, especially at their park. We've totally seen JU beat Florida State there and in Tallahassee. It hasn't always made much of a difference. Although I think Link's record against JU is pretty good since becoming the head coach. I'd have to go back and actually research that and look that up. But 6 o'clock
loss out there
at JU. 6 o'clock at JU. Yeah, man. A lot of Noles go out there. Do we want to touch on this Arlington tournament, or do we want to do another episode maybe later this week? I can see if Eric Llewellyn, and Chris Chavez can join us to give some of their thoughts on this weekend and then what they want to see out in Arlington against some good teams. But maybe a quick thought before we sign off on just the 3 opportunities Florida State has out there at the Rangers ballpark.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how they handle a ramp up quite that quick in competition that we haven't seen as much in the past few years. I know they went out to, Greenville a couple of years ago, but still not quite the competition that I think you're going to face with Michigan, Auburn, and Nebraska. Those are 2 of those teams are Big Ten teams, but I think, Nebraska was an Omaha team last year after winning the Big Ten tournament, and Michigan, they usually get off to a really good start in these early season tournaments because they're always down south playing them. And then, you mentioned it earlier, the ball has been flying out of Globe Life this weekend with the metal bats and the college games that have been going on there. So interested to see what some of FSU's power bats look like in that park. It'd be pretty fun to get out there and watch those guys taking BP out there.
Yeah, and from what I've seen, Nebraska seems much improved. They made they've made NCAA regionals, right? 2 years in a row. Have they won the Big Ten tournament 2 years in a row? I think that sounds correct.
I don't know if they won the tournament the year before. I know they won it last year for sure, but I don't remember if they were in at large or if they had won the tournament that prior year as well.
Yeah, and then Auburn's a top 10 team, right? Thompson does a great job there. There's some history between Florida State and Auburn in postseason. So you'll have a potential top 15 showdown there. That should be a lot of fun. I'm curious to see who the Noles throw, against Auburn and who Auburn throws against Florida State. And then Michigan has really impressed this weekend in Arizona. They beat Oregon State on opening day and then beat Stanford as well. And I was reading some articles and looking into them. It's an older team that, some people are picking as a sleeper in the mid-major. I consider Big Ten a mid-major when it comes to baseball, because really it's just UCLA and Oregon out there and USC from time to time that are power schools at baseball. Everyone else is kind of has the same issues as the northern schools in the smaller conferences. So, but people think Michigan's got a shot to be pretty good. They look like they're off to a good start already this season. And that's 3 opportunities for Florida State, Brett, that I think will be a major step up from what they've played in years past at this stage. Like, this is a way better 3 than even 2 years ago at Greenville, obviously, that they played. And I was talking to some of the coaches this weekend, and they're excited because you learn something rather than, beating up on somebody 16-5 or 21-3, or Georgia Tech beat someone 27-4 this weekend. You don't learn anything. It pads stats, and that's great, but you want to be in those environments, I think, early on to kind of get a pop quiz, right? It's not really a midterm. It's obviously not the final exam. It's a pop quiz early. early in the season. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Anything else, Brett, that we want to touch on before we sign off for the first time in the 2026 season?
No, you just reminded me I have an accounting exam to take tonight, and now I'm sad. So,
man, I am.
Wish me good luck.
That I don't go to school anymore, and that we're done with that. You decided to go back to school. Who does that? Going back to school, doing that to yourself, my man.
Hey, I guess it's because I didn't walk across the stage for graduation at FSU, so I felt like I owed my parents.
That's really fun.
Skipped a TCU FSU game. Fun time.
No doubt. All right, I think that's going to do it for us. Do you want to point back to people to get your 15% off at Alumni Hall? Jerseys, hats, sweaters, pullovers, you name it, they got it. SG15 is your code, SG15 to get 15% off at Alumni Hall. You can do it online or go in the store and let them know that Sunday Gold sent you, and they'll give you 15% there at the checkout counter in Tallahassee. That's over there off Timberlane and Market Square. So thanks to them, Metro Deli as well. Appreciate you. They are so good, man. I'm telling you, right there downtown. Can't beat it. Great sandwiches, wraps, you name it. They got it as well, and a good spot too. And those are the guys that have made it possible for us this year. Thanks to those of you listening. Again, we've got an hour, Brett, and our number of live viewers continues to increase as we want to hit the end stream button. But this will be available on podcasts everywhere, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. This will be an audio version. Brett and I will jump back on here later this week, and we'll get a full preview of the Arlington Globe Life Field tournament that the Noles are playing in, and give a little recap of JU as well. See if we can't get Eric Llewellyn and Chris Chavez, voice of the Noles and an All-American pitcher for Florida State, who's now on the broadcast team with ACC Network with myself, to hop on with us and give us their thoughts. Brett, you're the man. Good job. As always, good luck on your exam.
Thanks. I'm going to need it.
Yep. For Brett Nevitt, I'm Mario Masuda. You've been listening to Sunday Golds.